The shuttle broke through the violet clouds of Zythera Prime like a needle-piercing silk. Inside the craft, Ambassador Michael Harris sat with his hands folded in his lap, trying to hide how nervous he felt. After 20 years of sending messages into space, after 20 years of proving that humans were civilized and peaceful, this moment had finally arrived. "Stop fidgeting with your uniform, sir," Lieutenant Emma Clark said with a small smile. She was young, only 26, and this was her first major assignment as a security officer. The Galactic Council had told them that weapons weren't needed. This was supposed to be a celebration. Michael looked around at the other 10 people in the shuttle. Scientists, diplomats, cultural experts. They represented the very best of humanity. Dr. Richard Foster sat near the window, pressing his face against the glass like an excited child, watching the alien city grow larger below them. The shuttle landed without a sound. Through the windows, they could see thousands of aliens gathered around the landing platform. Creatures with too many legs, beings made of light, things that looked like floating jellyfish. The diversity was breathtaking. As the delegation walked down the ramp, the warm air hit them. It tasted sweet and made them feel slightly dizzy. Michael took a deep breath and walked forward. This was humanity's chance to join the community of spacefaring species. Everything they'd worked for had led to this single day. The ceremony hall was enormous. The ceiling seemed to stretch up forever, and the walls glowed with colors that human eyes couldn't quite process. Aliens filled every available space, watching with curiosity as the humans entered. But not all the aliens looked friendly. On a raised platform stood the Kythresh delegation. They were tall and angular, with armor-like skin and eyes that looked like black mirrors. They had voted against letting humans join the council. They'd called humans primitive, dangerous, too warlike to be trusted. The ceremony began with sounds that weren't quite music and movements that weren't quite dancing. Michael waited patiently, his translator earpiece working overtime to make sense of the alien speeches. Finally, the moment came. He stepped forward to accept the council charter, the document that would make Earth an official member. That's when everything went wrong. Energy barriers snapped into place around the human delegation. Translucent walls of crackling power trapped all 12 humans in an invisible cage. Michael spun around, confusion turning to fear on his face. "What's happening?" he shouted. The Kythresh commander walked toward them slowly, like a predator approaching cornered prey. Around the hall, other aliens began to panic. Some tried to leave. Others stood frozen, unable to believe what they were seeing. "A security measure," the Kythresh commander announced, his words translated into cold English. "The humans present a biological contamination risk. This is simply a precaution." "That's not true," Michael protested. "We passed all the medical screenings. We're not contaminated." But inside the energy cage, something was changing. Dr. Foster pulled out a small scanner and stared at the reading in horror. "The air," he gasped. "They're changing the air composition. We can't breathe this." Emma threw herself at the energy barrier, pounding her fists against it. The shield didn't even flicker. Around her, the other delegates realized what was happening. They were being suffocated. Slowly. Deliberately. Michael forced himself to stay calm even as his chest began to tighten. He activated his emergency communicator. "This is Ambassador Harris. We're under attack. The Kythresh are." The neural disruptor was silent and invisible. One moment Michael was speaking. The next moment he collapsed like a puppet with cut strings. His nervous system simply stopped working. Emma screamed and lunged toward him, but the second pulse hit her before she took 3 steps. She fell without a sound. One by one, the humans dropped. Some died quickly, their brains shut down in an instant. Others struggled for minutes, gasping for air that was no longer breathable, clawing at barriers that couldn't be broken. Dr. Foster was the last. He crawled toward his scanner, as if data could somehow save him. His fingers touched the device just as his body gave out. His eyes stayed open, staring at nothing. 4 minutes and 37 seconds. That's how long it took to murder 12 unarmed diplomats who had come in peace. The Kythresh commander looked at the bodies without emotion. Around the hall, the few aliens who had stayed watched in absolute silence. What they just witnessed was unthinkable. Diplomats were sacred. You didn't kill ambassadors. It violated every rule of civilized behavior. But the commander simply activated his communicator. "Council representatives, I apologize for the unfortunate malfunction in our security systems. The human delegation has suffered a tragic accident. We will return their bodies to Earth with full honors." No one moved to stop the Kythresh soldiers as they loaded the bodies into sealed containers. No one spoke. No one knew what to say. The containers were loaded onto a cargo ship bound for Earth. The Galactic Council received a formal notification explaining the accident. Everything was handled with cold efficiency. But someone had recorded everything. A junior technician from a species called the Quellans had kept her recording device active. She'd captured every moment of the massacre. And 3 days later, when she could no longer live with what she'd witnessed, she transmitted the recording to Earth. The message arrived at the same time as the containers holding the bodies. Admiral Rebecca Stone was waiting at the docking bay when both arrived. She was a career military officer who had prepared for first contact her entire life. She'd hoped for peace but planned for war. When the Kythresh diplomat tried to offer his rehearsed apologies, Rebecca cut him off with a single sentence. "Get off my station." The diplomat left quickly. Rebecca stood in the cargo bay, looking at 12 sealed containers. Inside were people she'd known. Friends. Colleagues. Dreamers who'd believed that humanity could find its place among the stars through peace and friendship. They'd been murdered for that belief. Rebecca's hands clenched into fists. Her face remained calm, but inside, something cold and hard was taking shape. A decision. A promise. She opened a communication channel to Earth Security Council. "This is Admiral Stone. I need an emergency session. Immediately. We have a situation." Behind her, the 12 containers sat in silent accusation. 12 lives ended by treachery. 12 reasons for what was about to happen. The Kythresh thought they'd eliminated a problem. They thought humans would accept the lie, would bow their heads and slink back to their little blue world. They had no idea what they'd just started. They had no idea that humans were from a death world, that violence was in humanity's blood, that mercy was a choice humans made, not a limitation they suffered. They were about to learn. The galaxy was about to learn. You don't murder Earth's peacemakers and expect to survive what comes next. The Galactic Council chamber erupted in chaos the moment Earth's declaration of war was broadcast. 247 species had gathered in emergency session, and none of them knew what to do. War was supposed to be ritualized, controlled, predictable. Species didn't just declare total war over a dozen deaths. Chancellor Torvin tried to restore order, his translator turning his whistling speech into something resembling authority. But the chamber wouldn't calm down. Everyone was shouting at once in frequencies ranging from rumbles that shook the floor to shrieks that hurt the ears. Emperor Vrathcon's hologram appeared in the center of the chamber, 3 times larger than life. He looked amused rather than concerned. "The humans are throwing a tantrum," he announced. "We should ignore them as we would ignore children." Ambassador Helen Wright had been waiting for this moment. She was Michael Harris's deputy, the woman who should have gone to Zythra Prime instead of him. She'd spent the last week not sleeping, not eating, just preparing for this speech. "Chancellor," she called out. "Humanity requests permission to address the council." "Humans have no voice here," the Emperor sneered. "They are not members." But Chancellor Torvin's tentacles quivered with what might have been anger. "Even the accused deserve to speak, Emperor. You cannot deny them that right." He gestured to Helen. "Speak, human." Helen walked to the speaking platform and inserted a data crystal into the holographic system. The image of Earth appeared, rotating slowly. Beautiful and blue and utterly deadly. "You think you know us," Helen began. "You've studied our broadcasts. You've read our literature. You believe you understand humanity." She paused. "You don't." The hologram zoomed in on Earth's surface. Hurricanes swirled across oceans. Volcanoes spewed fire into the sky. Earthquakes cracked the ground. "This is our home. By your standards, it's classified as a Class 12 death world. Only one classification is more dangerous." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Several species shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "Our atmosphere contains 21% oxygen," Helen continued. "That's so corrosive that 70% of galactic species can't breathe it without protective equipment. Our gravity is 1.3 times your standard. Our weather kills thousands every year. Our oceans contain predators that can swallow a small ship whole." The images changed. A great white shark tearing through a seal. A saltwater crocodile dragging prey underwater. A polar bear that weighed more than 3 humans combined. A tsunami wave taller than a building. 96% of all species that evolved on Earth went extinct, Helen said quietly. The planet killed them. Disease, predators, climate shifts, asteroid impacts. Earth has tried to kill life over and over again. Humanity survived because we learned to be tougher than everything trying to kill us. Emperor Vrathcon's hologram flickered. Your planet is hostile. We understand. But that doesn't make you warriors. Helen smiled. It wasn't a warm expression. You're absolutely right, Emperor. Our planet's hostility doesn't make us warriors. She pressed another button. Our response to that hostility does. The chamber filled with images. Human weapons spanning 10,000 years. Stone spears. Bronze swords. Steel cannons. Chemical weapons. Nuclear bombs. Railguns. Plasma cutters. Kinetic kill vehicles. We are a species that learned warfare by fighting each other, Helen explained. For thousands of years, we killed one another over resources, territory, beliefs, and pride. We built weapons for every environment. Land. Sea. Air. Space. We developed tactics for every situation because on Earth, if you weren't prepared for every threat, you died. Footage from human history played across every screen. Ancient battles with swords and shields. Medieval sieges with catapults. World War trenches with machine guns. Nuclear explosions that turned cities to ash in seconds. The Council watched in growing horror. Most species had abandoned warfare millennia ago, settling disputes through negotiation or ritualized combat with strict rules. But humans had perfected the art of killing each other on an industrial scale. We developed atomic weapons 70 years ago, Helen said. Weapons that can destroy entire cities. We used them twice, saw what they could do, and agreed never to use them on each other again. She paused. But we kept them. We improved them. Because on Earth, peace comes from being too dangerous to attack. Chancellor Torvin's translator barely whispered. You possess weapons that the Council banned 8,000 years ago? We possess those weapons and hundreds more you've never imagined, Helen confirmed. We've spent 40 years building warships in secret. Hoping for peace. Planning for war. The display shifted to show the hidden shipyards. Thousands of ships under construction in orbit around Mars, in the asteroid belt, near Saturn's moons. The Council saw magnetic accelerators that could throw chunks of metal at near-light speed. Fusion warheads. Computer viruses designed to take over enemy systems. Simple kinetic projectiles that no energy shield could stop. When the Kythresh murdered our diplomats, Helen said, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper, they didn't kill representatives from a primitive backwater. They killed peacemakers from a species that evolved to survive the unsurvivable. They killed ambassadors from a race that has been fighting wars since before most of your civilizations discovered fire. She turned to face Emperor Vrathcon's hologram directly. You called us primitive. You murdered 12 of our best people. Now you're going to learn what happens when you attack a species from a death world. The chamber exploded in arguments. Some species demanded humanity be sanctioned for possessing illegal weapons. Others argued that humanity had shown remarkable restraint by not using those weapons during peacetime. Some feared humans would destabilize the entire galaxy. Others quietly thought the galaxy needed destabilizing. Emperor Vrathcon laughed. Impressive presentation, human. But presentations don't win wars. The Kythresh Empire controls 12 star systems. We have 6,000 warships. We have technology refined over 20,000 years. What do you have? A few hundred ships built in secret. Helen's expression didn't change. We have something you lack, Emperor. We have experience with total war. Every species on this council fights according to rules. Ritualized combat. Strict protocols. Limitations you've imposed on yourselves because you've forgotten what real war looks like. She gestured to the images still floating around the chamber. Humans remember. We remember what it means to fight for survival. We remember carpet bombing, submarine warfare, combined arms operations, and total industrial mobilization. We remember that war isn't a game. It's the complete application of violence to achieve objectives. Helen's voice became ice. You have 6,000 warships, Emperor. Earth has 11 billion people. Our economy just shifted to full war production. In 6 months, we'll have 10,000 ships. In a year, 20,000. We can sustain casualties that would break any council species because we've done it before. In our Second World War alone, we lost 70 million people. And we kept fighting. The silence in the chamber was absolute. Even the Emperor's hologram seemed frozen. You want to know what we have? Helen asked. We have the will to do whatever it takes. We have weapons you've banned for millennia. We have 4 billion volunteers who signed up in the first week to avenge 12 murdered diplomats. And we have something else, Emperor. She leaned forward. We have nothing left to lose. You already killed our peacemakers. Now you face our warriors. Helen removed the data crystal and walked toward the exit. As she passed the Kythresh section, she stopped. 72 hours, Emperor. Surrender those responsible, or face what comes next. For the first time, Emperor Vrathcon's hologram showed something other than arrogance. His eyes betrayed uncertainty. Perhaps even the first whisper of fear. Because he'd just realized something the entire galaxy was learning. Humans weren't bluffing. And the sleeping giant had finally opened its eyes. Commander Daniel Jackson's stealth ship hung in the darkness between stars like a predator waiting to strike. The vessel was completely invisible, its hull coated with material that bent light and sensor waves around it. 15 other ships floated nearby, equally hidden, all waiting for the order to attack. Daniel had been in intelligence work for 18 years, but this mission was different. This wasn't about gathering information or tracking criminals. This was about sending a message written in fire and destruction. Sir, Halleck 7 colony is 3 hours away, Lieutenant Marcus Cole reported from his station. Intelligence shows 8,000 civilians and 4,000 military personnel. Daniel studied the holographic display. Halleck 7 was a mining colony that produced uranium for Kythresh reactors. It was also the birthplace of Commander Vrektal, the officer who had personally activated the energy barriers that trapped Earth's diplomats at Zythra Prime. What's the status of civilian evacuations? Daniel asked. Commander Patricia Moore pulled up the data. We've been broadcasting warnings for 48 hours. About 6,000 civilians have already left. 2,000 remain. Why haven't they left? Some have family in the military. Others don't believe we'll actually attack a colony. Patricia's face was grim. Some probably can't afford transport. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Earth's rules of engagement were clear. Warn civilians. Give them time to evacuate. Provide transportation if possible. Then, if they chose to stay, they accepted the consequences. Broadcast the final warning, Daniel ordered. Every frequency. Make it absolutely clear that anyone remaining in 3 hours will be in a combat zone. The message went out in a dozen languages. This is Commander Daniel Jackson of Earth Defense Forces. Halleck 7 will come under attack in 3 hours. All civilians must evacuate immediately. Free transport is available at all 3 spaceports. We do not want to harm innocents, but we will destroy this military installation. This is your final warning. On Halleck 7, panic erupted. Civilians flooded the spaceports, desperate to escape before the humans arrived. Captain Threvkal, the colony's military commander, watched his soldiers abandon their posts to save their families. He called Imperial Command. This is Halleck 7. We need reinforcements. The humans are coming in. Denied, came the cold response. All fleets are defending the core systems. Halleck 7 is on its own. You're abandoning us. Threvkal couldn't believe what he was hearing. You have your orders. Defend the colony. Make the humans pay for every meter. Show them that Kythresh warriors don't surrender. The channel went dead. Threvkal looked around his command center. Half his staff had already deserted. The ones who remained were either the most loyal or the most fanatical. Lock down the perimeter, he ordered. And bring the human prisoners to the command center. His second officer hesitated. Sir, those humans are mining contractors. They are civilians. They are leverage, Threvkal corrected coldly. On the shadow of intent, the deadline expired. Daniel checked the final count. 11,300 civilians had evacuated. 700 remained. And the sensors showed something else. Sir, we're detecting human life signs, Patricia reported. 37 of them, held in the military command center. Daniel's jaw tightened. Human mining contractors who'd been working on Kythresh colonies when the war started. Now they were hostages. A communication came through. Captain Threvkal appeared on the screen, his alien face unreadable. I am Captain Threvkal, commander of Halleck 7. Withdraw your forces immediately, or the human prisoners will be executed. Daniel kept his voice calm. Captain, you know we can destroy your installation from orbit. Killing those prisoners won't save you. It will only ensure you die as a war criminal. Then we die, Threvkal said simply. But we take your people with us. Can you accept that, Commander? Will you murder your own citizens to destroy a mining colony? Daniel muted the channel and turned to his tactical officer. Can we extract the prisoners? Marcus ran the calculations. The command center is underground and heavily fortified. A rescue would require ground forces we don't have. Estimated casualties for our team would be 80%. Survival rate for prisoners, maybe 20%. Daniel closed his eyes. 37 lives against a military objective. The cold mathematics of war. He opened the channel again. Captain Threvkal, I'll make you an offer. One time only. Release the prisoners, surrender your military personnel, and we'll let you evacuate with the remaining civilians. You'll be treated according to the laws of war and repatriated when the conflict ends. Threvkal was silent for a long moment. Daniel could see the calculation in his eyes. Pride versus survival. You have 1 hour, Threvkal finally said. Send one unarmed shuttle. We release the prisoners. Then we surrender. Agreed. 53 minutes later, the shuttle touched down. 37 humans stumbled out, thin and bruised but alive. Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell verified their identities and got them aboard. All accounted for, Commander. Get them out of there. As the shuttle lifted off, Captain Threvkal's voice came over the open channel. The prisoners are released. We wish to surrender, as agreed. Daniel broadcast to the entire colony. All Kythresh military personnel, power down your weapons and assemble in the main courtyard with no arms. You will be transported to a holding facility and treated according to galactic conventions. For 10 minutes, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the defensive batteries powered down. Thermal sensors showed soldiers emerging from bunkers, gathering in the courtyard. Captain Threvkal was the last to emerge, walking with his back straight despite the defeat. All personnel accounted for, Marcus reported. 412 soldiers. Daniel ordered transport ships to collect the prisoners. Full safety protocols. Treat them with respect. As the transports descended, Patricia asked quietly, what about the colony itself? Daniel looked at Helix 7 on the display. Empty except for the soldiers being taken into custody. The mines, the refineries, the infrastructure that supplied the Kythresh war machine. Once the prisoners are secure, destroy everything. Leave nothing they can use. The destruction was methodical. Railgun strikes demolished refineries. Fusion charges collapsed mine shafts. Electromagnetic pulses fried every computer. In 4 hours, a productive colony became rubble. But not one civilian died. Not one prisoner was executed. The 412 Kythresh soldiers were transported to a neutral facility where they received medical care, adequate food, and treatment that exceeded council standards. The galaxy watched in stunned disbelief. This wasn't how wars were fought. Species either annihilated enemies or engaged in ritualized combat. But humans were showing mercy to defeated soldiers while being utterly ruthless to military targets. Admiral Rebecca Stone addressed the Galactic Council via transmission, standing before images of destroyed Helix 7 and the unharmed prisoners. Let this be understood. Humanity does not make war on civilians. We do not torture prisoners. But we will destroy every military asset the Kythresh Empire possesses until they surrender those responsible for murdering our diplomats. Over the next 6 weeks, Commander Jackson's fleet struck 12 more colonies. Each time the pattern repeated. Warning. Evacuation. Offer of surrender. Then complete destruction of military assets. Not every commander chose surrender. At Outpost Tharx 9, the garrison commander refused to evacuate civilians, using them as shields. Daniel withdrew and broadcast footage of the commander's decision to every Kythresh world, then systematically destroyed only military installations while avoiding civilian areas. Within days, the civilian population rose up and arrested their own commander. At Colony Vexa 4, the military surrendered immediately upon receiving the warning. The Kythresh Empire was learning what it meant to fight an enemy that combined total military commitment with strict ethical constraints. It was psychologically devastating. They couldn't paint humans as monsters because humans kept proving they were more civilized than the Empire. On Kythresh Prime, Emperor Vrathkon raged. 12 colonies. And barely a shot fired because our commanders surrender like cowards. General Krathven kept his expression neutral. Your Majesty, the commanders choose survival. The humans offer honorable surrender. Our people see that prisoners are well treated. They see resistance means death while surrender means survival. Then make surrender impossible. Vrathkon slammed his fist down. Execute any commander who surrenders. Exile their families. Krathven bowed and left, knowing the order would only accelerate the Empire's collapse. Fear might force soldiers to fight, but it wouldn't give them the will to win. The humans had already won the moral war. Now they were winning the military war. And the psychological war was proving decisive. Meanwhile, Ambassador Helen Wright's diplomatic campaign bore fruit. She'd spent weeks presenting evidence of 3 centuries of Kythresh atrocities to Council worlds. Slave colonies. Genocides. Forced relocations. The evidence was damning. The Council had simply chosen not to look before. The vote came 3 days later. By a margin of 147 to 93, the Galactic Council officially condemned the Kythresh Empire and imposed full economic sanctions. It wasn't military support. But it was acknowledgement that humanity's cause was just. And more importantly, it was the beginning of the Empire's isolation. The sleeping giant was awake. And the galaxy was learning what that meant. 9 months had passed since 12 diplomats died at Zythra Prime. In that time, humanity had destroyed 47 Kythresh military bases, liberated 6 slave colonies, and captured over 15,000 enemy soldiers. All prisoners were treated well, fed properly, and given medical care that exceeded galactic standards. The Kythresh Empire had fought back by attacking Earth's outer colonies, killing 3,200 civilians in bombardments that violated every law of war. Humanity's response was swift and terrible. The fleet responsible was hunted down and destroyed. Not one ship escaped. Now, 3,000 human warships hung at the edge of the Kythresh home system like an executioner's blade waiting to fall. Admiral Rebecca Stone stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Retribution, studying the tactical displays. The enemy had recalled every available ship to defend their homeworld. 4,200 Kythresh vessels waited in defensive formations, backed by 800 orbital platforms and planetary shields strong enough to withstand sustained bombardment. "It's everything they have," Captain William Drake observed. "Every ship, every weapon, every soldier." Rebecca nodded slowly. "Then we'd better make this count." She activated fleet-wide communications. Her face appeared on screens throughout the Armada. 68,000 crew members from every nation on Earth, united in purpose. 9 months ago, 12 of our people went to Zythra Prime seeking peace. They were murdered by an empire that saw kindness as weakness. Today we stand ready to deliver justice. She gestured to the tactical display showing the massive Kythresh fleet. They have 4,000 ships. Hundreds of platforms. Millions of soldiers. They think their numbers will save them. They're wrong. Rebecca's expression hardened. But before we fire a single shot, we're giving them one more chance. Not because they deserve it, but because that's who we are. She opened a direct channel to the Imperial Palace. "This message is for Emperor Vrathcon. We have evidence of your crimes. Surrender those responsible to face trial before the Galactic Council. Do this, and the war ends today. Refuse, and we take them by force." On the planet below, Emperor Vrathcon watched the transmission with barely controlled rage. "She dares demand our surrender at our own homeworld." General Krathven, who had watched the Empire crumble for 9 months, spoke carefully. "Your Majesty, perhaps we should consider." "Consider surrender? Never." Vrathcon's voice was venomous. "The Kythresh do not bow to primitives from a backwater world." He broadcast his response across the entire system. "This is your Emperor. The humans come demanding our surrender. They think victories at border colonies mean they can threaten our homeworld. They are wrong. Every ship will fight to the last. Every soldier will defend our world with their life. When their fleet is broken and burning, the galaxy will remember that empires do not fall to threats." On Retribution's bridge, Rebecca absorbed the refusal in silence. She'd hoped for surrender but expected this response. "Admiral, massive power surges across their defensive network," William reported. "They're going to full combat status." Rebecca activated her command channel. "All ships, battle stations. Execute Operation Reckoning." The human fleet advanced into the system with deliberate precision. Not charging recklessly, but moving like a tide. Inevitable. Unstoppable. The Kythresh fleet moved to intercept, forming defensive screens around the orbital platforms. It was textbook strategy that would have worked against any Council species. But humans didn't fight like other species. "All ships, disperse to attack formation," Rebecca commanded. "Fighters launch. And Daniel, it's time." Commander Daniel Jackson's stealth fleet had been hiding in the asteroid field for 3 days. Now they dropped camouflage and accelerated at maximum speed, not toward the main fleet but toward the orbital platforms. The Kythresh detected them too late. 16 stealth ships against 800 platforms seemed like suicide. But the stealth ships weren't trying to destroy all the platforms. They were creating chaos. Fusion warheads detonated among platform networks, destroying power relays. Electromagnetic pulses fried targeting systems. Kinetic projectiles severed communication links, turning a coordinated defensive network into hundreds of isolated weapons. Daniel's ship took a direct hit. Shields barely held. Damage report. Shields at 30%. Starboard weapons offline. Keep moving. Don't give them a stationary target. The stealth fleet moved through the defensive network like sharks among whales. Smaller, faster, more agile. They couldn't destroy everything, but they broke the formation. Admiral Stone, defensive network is fragmented, Daniel reported through gritted teeth as another hit rocked his ship. You have a corridor. Confirmed. All ships, follow the corridor. Fighters, engage. Thousands of human fighters launched from carrier ships and accelerated toward the Kythresh fleet. Pilots who trained in simulators based on centuries of aerial combat doctrine hit the enemy formation like a swarm of wasps. The Kythresh warships had weapons designed for ship-to-ship combat. They could destroy dreadnoughts with sustained fire. But fighters were something different. Small, fast, maneuvering in 3 dimensions. The pilots exploited every weakness. They used enemy ships as cover, hiding in sensor shadows. They targeted weapon systems and engines, crippling ships rather than destroying them. They coordinated in real time, sharing data, adapting constantly. But the Kythresh were not helpless. Their fleet began to adapt, using point defense more effectively. Human fighters started dying. Dozens, then hundreds, then thousands of small lights winking out as brave pilots gave their lives. Admiral, we're taking heavy casualties, reported Captain Julia Chen, fighter wing commander. But we've disrupted their formation. You have an opening. Rebecca saw it. A gap bought with the lives of pilots who knew they probably wouldn't survive but launched anyway. All capital ships, full assault. Target the orbital platforms. Human dreadnoughts advanced, railguns firing at maximum rate. Tungsten rounds traveling near light speed slammed into platforms, tearing them apart. Missile barrages saturated defenses. Laser batteries carved through weakened shields. The Kythresh fought back desperately. Energy weapons struck human ships, vaporizing armor. Torpedoes destroyed escorts. The space between fleets became a killing field. But humans kept advancing. Rebecca watched casualty reports climbing. 40 ships lost, then 60, then 80. Thousands dead. But the objective remained clear. Admiral. Kythresh flagship closing on our position. It's massive. On the display, Rebecca saw it. The Imperial flagship Eternal Glory, 3 times Retribution size, breaking formation to engage directly. It was a challenge. The Emperor himself facing the human admiral. Rebecca smiled coldly. Intercept course. All weapons, target that ship. Both ships closed to 10,000 kilometers and opened fire simultaneously. Eternal Glory's plasma cannons were devastating, designed to melt any armor. But Retribution's ablative plating had been specifically designed for this, sacrificing outer layers to protect the hull. Retribution's railgun fired continuously. 3-ton slugs at 0.7 light speed hit Eternal Glory's shields, overwhelming them through pure kinetic energy. The duel lasted 17 minutes. When it ended, Eternal Glory was venting atmosphere from a dozen breaches, weapons offline, engines failing. Retribution had severe damage but was still fighting. Hail them, Rebecca ordered. General Krathven appeared on screen, his armor scorched and cracked. Not the Emperor, but his general. General, your ship is finished. Your fleet is breaking. Order your forces to stand down. Krathven's expression was weary. For 9 months he'd watched the Empire crumble. The Emperor ordered us to fight to the last. But I'm done following orders from a leader who murders diplomats and leads his people to destruction. He straightened. Admiral Stone, I surrender the Imperial fleet. All ships will stand down. But the Emperor has fortified the palace with fanatics. If you want him, you'll have to dig him out. Rebecca nodded. Order your fleet to power down and move to the coordinates we're transmitting. They'll be treated according to the laws of war. And General, thank you. You just saved thousands of lives. Throughout the system, Imperial ships began powering down. Not all of them. Some commanders chose death. But most, seeing their flagship surrender, chose survival. The Battle of Kythresh Prime was over. But the war had one final act remaining. The Imperial Palace sat at the heart of the capital city like a fortress within a fortress. Built over 2,000 years, it was protected by shields strong enough to withstand orbital bombardment and defended by 40,000 elite Imperial Guard soldiers sworn to die for the Emperor. Admiral Rebecca Stone stood in a command shuttle hovering over the city, studying holographic displays. The palace was impenetrable from orbit. Any attempt to blast through the shields would destroy half the city and kill millions of civilians. A ground assault would mean heavy casualties on both sides. General Wright, status of ground forces? Rebecca asked. General Thomas Wright appeared on screen. 20,000 Marines ready. But Admiral, those defenses are formidable. We're looking at massive casualties. Rebecca stared at the palace, thinking of Emperor Vrathcon hiding inside. The man who ordered the murder of Earth's diplomats. The man who started this war. The man who refused every chance for peace. There has to be another way, she muttered. Captain William Drake spoke up. Admiral, what if we don't assault the palace? Rebecca turned. Explain. The Emperor expects us to attack. He's prepared for siege, for bombardment, for assault. But what if we do something unexpected? William brought up a display of the capital city. We broadcast his crimes. Not to the council, but to his own people. Every atrocity, every murder, every lie. We turned the Kythresh population against him. Director Catherine Mills's voice came over communications. William's right. We have 300 years of evidence. Imperial archives captured at Vorkath. Testimony from surrendered commanders. We have proof the Emperor has been lying to his people about everything. Rebecca considered this. A psychological operation instead of military assault. It went against every instinct for direct action. But it might save thousands of lives. Do it, she ordered. Blanket broadcast. Every frequency, every network. I want every Kythresh citizen to see exactly what their Emperor has done. The broadcast began 3 hours later. Every screen in the capital flickered and changed. Every communication device activated. Every holographic projector displayed the same images. The massacre at Zythra Prime, shown in full detail from security recordings. Human delegates gasping for air while the Kythresh commander watched and smiled. The slave colonies where entire species were worked to death. The execution orders for commanders who chose honorable surrender. The deliberate attack on human civilian colonies, targeting schools and hospitals. And finally, recorded testimony from General Krathven, explaining how the Emperor manufactured the accident at Zythra Prime to prevent human admission to the Council. The broadcast ended with Admiral Stone's message, Citizens of Kythresh Prime, we did not come to conquer you. We came for justice. Your Emperor murdered innocent diplomats and led your empire into a war that cost hundreds of thousands of lives. Surrender him to face trial, and we leave in peace. Protect him, and we remove him by force. The choice is yours. In the streets, Kythresh citizens gathered in shocked silence, watching evidence of their Emperor's crimes. In the palace, Emperor Vrathcon raged, ordering technicians to block the broadcast. But it was too late. The humans had infiltrated every network. Every citizen had seen the truth. Within an hour, protests began. Peaceful at first, then growing larger and angrier. Citizens demanding answers. Soldiers questioning their orders. By the 6th hour, the Imperial Guard faced crowds of millions demanding the Emperor surrender. By the 12th hour, Guard soldiers began defecting, unwilling to kill their own people to protect a leader who had lied for so long. By the 18th hour, senior Imperial Guard officers entered the throne room, weapons lowered. Your Majesty, their commander said quietly, it's over. The people know the truth. The fleet surrendered. The war is lost. End this with dignity, or we end it for you. Emperor Vrathcon looked at officers who had served him loyally for decades and saw determination in their eyes. His empire had finally, truly fallen. Very well, he said bitterly. Summon the humans. Let them have their justice. The trial was held on Zythra Prime, in the same council hall where 12 human diplomats had been murdered. The symbolism was deliberate. Representatives from every council species attended. The chamber was packed with journalists, diplomats, and witnesses. The galaxy watched as Emperor Vrathcon and 43 co-conspirators were led into the chamber in restraints. Chancellor Torvin presided, flanked by judges from 12 different species. Not one human judge sat on the panel. Admiral Stone had insisted. This isn't human justice. This is galactic justice. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Ambassador Helen Wright methodically presented evidence. Security footage. Testimony from survivors. Communications logs. Financial records showing 3 centuries of exploitation. The defense attorney did his best. He argued the emperor acted in the empire's interests. He claimed the massacre was an overreaction by a subordinate. He suggested slave colonies were voluntary work programs. But the evidence was overwhelming. On the 21st day, the tribunal retired to deliberate. 6 hours later they returned. Chancellor Torvin read the verdict. The tribunal finds Emperor Vrathcon guilty of ordering the murder of 12 diplomatic representatives. Guilty of crimes against sentient beings. Guilty of ordering attacks on civilian populations. He paused. 41 co-defendants are also found guilty. 2 are acquitted for lack of evidence. Vrathcon stood motionless. Sentencing. Emperor Vrathcon receives life imprisonment under council jurisdiction. Co-defendants receive sentences from 20 years to life. The Kythresh Empire is dissolved. Its 12 systems granted independence under council supervision. Reparations paid to all harmed species. The chamber erupted in mixed reactions. Some felt sentences were too lenient. Others felt justice was served. Rebecca Stone, watching from the human section, felt exhausted satisfaction. It wasn't perfect. Michael Harris and the others were still dead. 53,000 humans died in the war. But it was justice, delivered fairly, witnessed by the galaxy. It would have to be enough. The memorial ceremony was held on Earth at the newly constructed monument to the fallen in Geneva. 12 columns of white marble stood in a circle, each bearing the name and image of a diplomat killed at Zythra Prime. Around the central monument, smaller plaques honored 53,000 humans who died in the war. Admiral Rebecca Stone stood before the memorial in the gentle rain. Secretary-General David Morrison gave the speech. 9 months ago, we sent our best as ambassadors of peace. They were murdered by those who saw kindness as weakness. These 12 people and the 53,000 who followed proved humanity could fight when necessary. But more importantly, they proved we could win without becoming monsters. He gestured to the monuments. We gave warnings. We evacuated civilians. We treated prisoners with dignity. We offered surrender. And when victory came, we insisted on justice, not revenge. Morrison turned to the crowd. The cost was terrible. Every name represents a life cut short, dreams unfulfilled. We can never repay that debt. But we honor it by remembering why they fought. Not for conquest or glory, but for principle. That peace must be protected. That justice must be defended. That those who murdered diplomats must answer. The ceremony concluded with 53,000 drumbeats, one for each fallen warrior. Rebecca stepped forward and placed her hand on Michael Harris's column. She'd known him 15 years. His daughter was her goddaughter. We did it, Mike, she whispered. Justice is done. 3 months later, the Galactic Council voted on humanity's membership. After hours of debate, the result came, 219 in favor, 23 opposed, 5 abstentions. Ambassador Helen Wright stood to accept Earth's seat. She placed a holographic projector on the desk, activating images of the 12 murdered delegates. Forever young, forever hopeful. Let this remind everyone, Helen said. Humanity came to the stars seeking friends. We found them, but only after paying a terrible price. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us daily. We survived by becoming stronger than any threat. She looked around the chamber. We do not want war. We prefer diplomacy and peaceful resolution. But understand this, we are peaceful by choice, not inability. We seek harmony because we know war's horror. But if you threaten our people, if you murder our peacemakers, you will learn what evolution forged in a Deathworld's crucible. She sat, and the hologram remained active. A permanent reminder. The chamber fell silent, then slowly applauded. First the Quellans, then others who had watched the war. Even some who voted against admission acknowledged humanity had earned its place. 5 years later, when the VRYNN collective began aggressively expanding, threatening Council worlds, 4 to 7 species joined Earth in forming the first United Coalition Defense Force. Admiral Daniel Jackson commanded mixed species crews in combined tactics. The VRYNN, expecting easy victories against divided species, instead faced coordinated defense combining the best of dozens of civilizations. They were stopped, contained, and eventually brought to the negotiating table. The galaxy learned an important lesson: the Council could defend itself when united. And humanity had shown them how. 10 years after the massacre, a monument was unveiled at Zythra Prime. 12 pillars of crystallized light, each containing a holographic image of a murdered diplomat. At the base, a plaque in every council language. Here fell 12 ambassadors of Earth, murdered while seeking peace. Let this remind all that diplomats are sacred, peace is fragile, and those who protect civilization with kindness are not weak, they simply choose not to show their strength. From Earth we learned that the most dangerous warriors are those who would rather not fight. True strength includes restraint. Victory should be tempered with mercy. Rebecca attended the unveiling, now retired. She stood before Michael Harris's pillar. We made it, Mike. Real peace. The kind worth fighting for. 50 years later, Jennifer Harris, Michael's daughter, prepared for her first diplomatic assignment. She stood before Geneva's memorial, looking at her father's column. Her godmother Rebecca, ancient but sharp, stood beside her. Nervous. Terrified. What if I mess up and start another war? Rebecca smiled. Your father was nervous too. Every good diplomat is. But you're prepared. You understand we came seeking peace, but we're ready to defend it. Jennifer looked at her father's image. Was it worth it? The war, the deaths. Rebecca was silent, looking at 53,000 names. Every life lost was tragedy. But the alternative, allowing diplomats to be murdered with impunity, would have cost more lives eventually. Your father died seeking peace. We fought to ensure his sacrifice meant something. 50 years later, the galaxy is more peaceful than it's been in 1,000 years. Jennifer walked toward her transport, ready to carry her father's legacy through patient diplomatic work. Rebecca watched her go. Rest easy, Mike. Your daughter's going to be fine. The galaxy learned its lesson. The rain fell gently, washing over the memorial. But the names remained, etched in stone and memory. A reminder of when humanity showed the galaxy what happens when Deathworlders declare war. And more importantly, what happens when they choose peace instead. The galaxy was at peace. And it would stay that way. Because humanity was watching.